I'll do. Hello. Hi, everyone.
Gonna have to start
Can you guys hear
doing
us?
phone calls on speaker. Right, is my snacks in the kitchen?
Yep.
Hi, Andrew.
Hello.
Hi. Hi, Adam. Hi, Glenn. Hi, Simon. Thank you all
Hi.
for joining. How are you guys?
Right, thank you.
Lovely.
It's very wet here.
It really is. It really is. I was telling Emily that I was trying to go home from the office, and as a combination of the rain and schools being back, so all children coming out of school, I got stuck in traffic and decided to turn my car around and come back into the office for the meeting because I would have never made it in time.
Well done for that. I think everyone else will echo that. So well done, Michaela.
Thank you, Simon. We are just waiting on another couple of people that have registered. So we might wait one more minute and then we're going to make a start. So we're going to be on track with our timing. And Archie just messaged me saying that he had to restart his laptop, of course. But with me today, there is Emily, which will lead the training. It's a quite interactive training. I have already attended once. So I will ask you all to, when Emily starts presenting, to mute yourself, and then there will be moments where we can all join the conversation. So feel free to then unmute yourself to answer any questions or ask any questions as well. And I will keep an eye on the chat as well. So if nothing will be missed. So I will make sure that everything is addressed. Right, Emily, do you want to make a start? Want to present yourself?
Yeah, absolutely. So thank you so much for having me today. My name is Emily, and I am the manager for the Positive Wellbeing Service, which is a social prescribing service designed to support older people, younger people, older people, anybody who might be experiencing social isolation and loneliness. So one of the reasons we wanted to present to you guys today is because we'll touch on this a little bit towards the end of the training, but your role as digital champions puts you in a really brilliant and unique position to identify and support people who might be feeling isolated and lonely. So the aim of the session today, the first half, we'll be looking at kind of the concepts behind isolation and loneliness and a little bit of signposting and awareness for what that is. And then at the second half, we'll be looking at positive wellbeing and how potentially digital champions could work with positive wellbeing and how the service runs. So as Michaela said, it can be quite an interactive session, so please feel free to unmute your mic and speak. Because there's only a couple of us in here, do feel free to unmute and contribute wherever you feel you'd like to, or just use the chat function, because there will be some bits where it'd be great to hear from you on what your thoughts and opinions are. But no worries, if you prefer to just type in the chat, do feel free to do that. So I always like to start the session off by kind of discussing what the term lonely means to kind of people individually. So if you just take a second to think about the term social isolation and loneliness and what independently they mean to you, feel free to pop your thoughts in the chat or unmute yourself and say, but I'm always quite open to admit that before I took this role, I often associated isolation and loneliness with the older generation. It didn't really occur to me that it could be something that people experience across their life course. So is that something that, in this room people have experienced, or what do you think of when you think of the terms isolation and loneliness? Does anyone have any thoughts they'd like to share? I see typing. Yeah, sadness. That's a really, really important one, because I think a lot of the time it's the associated feelings that come with isolation and loneliness that often can mean that isolation and loneliness aren't necessarily identified. And we'll touch on that a little bit later on how symptoms can kind of appear as, for example, depression or anxiety, and a person might not link link that with feelings of isolation and loneliness and a lack of contact. Yeah, very much anyone, yeah, feeling excluded, definitely. So from previous sessions, these are some of the words that we've had come up. So feeling alone, family, parents, ignored, health. Health is a significant one. Divorce, carer, neurodiversity, anxiety, and a significant one as well as poverty. So in a survey that we ask our service users, we take a bit of information about some of the barriers that they experience, like finances, transport, for example. And 46% agreed that finances impacted their ability to reconnect during our pilot project, and that increased to 62% after a year. So that's a 16% increase within 1 year of how badly finances have affected a person's ability to reconnect. So I think that's a really, really significant thing to consider. So as Adam, you said, pretty much anybody. So you can feel isolated at any point in your life, and it can come and go and stick around for a while, or you can feel it in a crowd or by yourself, and usually it's triggered by life changes. Michaela, I see you've got your hand up.
Sorry, I didn't want to interrupt you. I just want to check that everyone can see the presentation, because Archie was having some issues, and I just wanted to check that it was technical issue on his side rather than I can see the presentation, but of course I want to check with everyone. So if you can give me a thumbs up, guys, with the reaction, or just nod. There are okay. Andrew, yeah, brilliant.
Yep, all good.
Thank you. Sorry.
That's okay. Simon, you've got your, oh, is that a legacy hand? No worries. Okay, yeah. So as I was saying, loneliness is different for everybody. You can feel alone at any time in your life. It can come and go, stick around for a while, and you can feel it in a crowd or by yourself. And usually it's triggered by life changes. So some of the life changes that I've listed on the screen might appear quite obvious to you, but for some, some of them might not necessarily really have been thought of. So one's quite self-explanatory, is bereavement. So potentially losing a husband, a wife, a parent, a sibling, for example. It can really disrupt a person's rhythm of life, and it can cause disconnection. Retiring. Retiring is one I always think is often kind of missed, because whilst we do associate older people with feelings of isolation and loneliness, actually that specific point in their life, that retirement, the change in habit, removal of a daily routine of socialization, can really be a triggering point for somebody to experience both social isolation and loneliness. The same with starting university, so it's a really significant one, especially in that very transitional age in life, when you're leaving your family home, or you're leaving what's very familiar to you, and you're kind of taking life on in your own way. It can be a really isolating time for somebody, and actually almost 1 in 4 university students experience loneliness most or all of the time now, which is chronic loneliness, and that's quite significant. Empty nest syndrome, kind of the opposite, but on the opposite end, the parents where their children are leaving the home, going to uni, or having that time away, extended periods away from their children. It can be a really, really difficult time, especially when it's such a nurturing role and have people dependent on you. To suddenly just lose that one day, it can be, again, really difficult. Moving, again, this is quite self-explanatory, but moving far away from friends or family mean that new connections might be hard to make new connections, and older connections can be harder to maintain. And another one that kind of highlights the importance of digital connection and how people utilize these resources to be able to stay in contact with people. And relationship breakdowns, unfortunately, is a fact of life. It might lead to a loss of friends, and again, a loss of regular connections. And new parenthood, which is known to be a very isolating time. So what we're going to have a quick look at now. Oh, Glenn, got your hand up. Glenn, did you have a question?
We cannot hear you. Do you want to pop your question in the chat, maybe? It looks like you are unmuted, but we still cannot hear you. If you could type the question, and if you have a question to put in the chat, that would be helpful.
I will just keep going, Glenn, and if you can pop the question in when you've got time, that'd be fab. But yeah, we'll just look at some of the myths surrounding isolation and loneliness, because I think it's really important to reduce the stigma, to know about isolation and loneliness, and kind of have an idea of what the misconceptions surrounding it are. So the first one, as I mentioned at the beginning, is that only older people can feel isolated and lonely, and that is not at all true. We're all vulnerable to social isolation and loneliness, and it is something that most of us have, or unfortunately will at some point experience in our lives. The UK government recently published something called the Tackling Loneliness Strategy, which is a brilliant strategy that you can access online, and it just gives a lot of different facts and statistics about isolation and loneliness. And recently they've actually reported that people who are aged between 16 and 24 are just as, if not more likely, to experience isolation and loneliness than the older generations. This is quite a stark statistic, and not something that you'd often think about, especially with how connected we can associate, digital connection that we associate with younger people. It really highlights actually there might be a gap there. The second is that isolation and loneliness are the same thing, and this is a really common misconception. The key differences are that isolation refers to the objective lack of people around a person, whereas loneliness refers to the emotions that occur when a person perceives a mismatch between their feelings of desired connection and their levels of actual connection. And it's really important to differentiate the two, because the next point on there, you can only feel lonely when you're on your own, and that's not true. And so the reason why it's so important to disconnect the two is because you can be surrounded by lots and lots of people and still feel very alone, or you can be surrounded by nobody and not feel lonely at all. So understanding the difference is so important. So when you're talking to somebody who objectively you might think is lonely, you're not going in there and suggesting to them that they receive support when they really don't need it. Or likewise, if you see somebody who is very connected, you're not just automatically assuming that they can't be lonely because they've got lots of people around them. So understanding that the two terms are distinct is really important, to be able to facilitate and identify support that's needed. The same for, it's obvious when someone's feeling lonely, not always, whilst there are indicators to look out for, and we'll cover some of these later. Loneliness isn't always easy to spot. A person can appear really chatty or appear really connected, but actually they are experiencing loneliness. And the best way to find out if somebody is lonely is actually to talk about it. And again, this links back to the digital connection, especially now where people are using social media, really using social media for everything that they do. It can be quite, you can see lots of posts and lots of activity on social media that could potentially make you think that somebody isn't lonely, and it can really kind of skew our ability to detect whether somebody's feeling isolated or lonely. So being able to realize that digital connection somebody who is digitally connected might appear that way, they might still be needing support. And the final two is that talking about loneliness is embarrassing and that people won't understand. And as we've said, loneliness is something that lots of people feel, something they experience, and something that absolutely should not be ashamed about them to talk about. So talking about loneliness is a really important way to reduce the stigma, and it can be a really important way to let other people that they aren't alone and feeling alone. More people are actually prepared to talk about feelings of depression and anxiety than they are loneliness, and again, that's quite stark. Why is that? Why do we think that is? If there's that association with anxiety and depression can be quite stigmatizing. So to know that isolation and loneliness are perceived similarly, if not worse than that, really gives you insight into what might go through a person's mind if they are feeling that way. So the next thing that we are going to do is just go through a couple of facts about isolation and loneliness. And to do this, it'd be really great if you could just drop what you think the answer is in the chat, or just unmute and say. But we'll just go through a couple of questions just to get an idea of, where we're at in terms of our knowledge about isolation and loneliness. So how many adults in the UK have reported feeling lonely or isolated at some point in their lives? So the answer options are 8 million, 17 million, 25 million, or 30 million. Yep, one person saying 25.
I will
30.
refrain myself from answering this because I know the answer.
No cheating.
I'm going to go 17.
Yeah. 17. Okay. So the answer is 25 million. So 25 million adults in the UK reported feeling lonely or isolated at some point in their lives. So for context, that is over half of UK adults have experienced loneliness. And again, I think that really highlights how significant the issue of isolation and loneliness is, and how actually you might not necessarily realize that when you're having conversations with people. Would you necessarily think that? So the next question is, what percentage of people often or always feel lonely at work? So 5%, 7%, 9%, or 10%. Just with the misspelling and that, I have to change that. It was my eyes and I was not reading that properly. Yep, so 9%, 10%, 9. So the answer to that one is 10%. Yeah, so 10% of people often or always feel lonely at work, and nearly half experience loneliness at work some of the time. So I think that really resonates with me, especially with the adoption of hybrid working. Again, a lot of people are now using digital technology to work online, and it can be really important to be able to look after yourselves when at work, or people who are working from home, because it can be really isolating time, and again, something that's not really necessarily considered. So the next question is, what percentage of people experiencing chronic loneliness also experience mental distress? So 50%, 60%, 70%, or 80%? One for 80. Yep. Will it be saying 80 so far? 70. Okay, so the answer to that one's actually 60%. So 60% of people experiencing loneliness also experience mental distress. So it's important to note that isolation and loneliness aren't in themselves mental health issues, but they can be associative, they can be causative of that. And that's really important to note, as well, as we said before, that sometimes a person can be feeling extremely anxious or extremely depressed, and those feelings are associated with isolation and loneliness, and that can make it hard for a person to realise perhaps that might be the root cause. So again, understanding that people experiencing chronic loneliness also can experience mental distress can be really helpful in being able to identify somebody experiencing that. So the final question is, isolation and loneliness are as harmful to your health as smoking how many cigarettes a day? So 0, 3, 8, or 15. How many cigarettes do we think? 8. Okay, lots of you saying 8. Yeah. So the answer to that one, unfortunately, is it's 15. So smoking, smoking 15 cigarettes a day. Loneliness is as harmful as smoking 15 cigarettes a day. That's really, really significant, and it really demonstrates that isolation and loneliness are a risk to both your physical and mental health. I think this is a really, really important statistic to include, because I think sometimes you might not associate physical health with isolation and loneliness. And also, interestingly, it can increase your risk of early mortality by 26%. So you might have seen the concept of isolation and loneliness and support for it coming up more and more in the agenda, and hopefully you will continue to see this, and that is because there is that association between isolation and loneliness and increased likelihood of mental health issues, but also physical health issues. So we know that isolation and loneliness are harmful to our health, but what can we do to help? So by understanding the differences between isolation and loneliness and the risk factors that can increase a person's likelihood of experiencing it, we can identify people and signpost them to the resources that can make them better. And it's really important to first understand the stigma attached to feeling isolated and lonely, to be able to really understand the person's experience with it. So there are a combination of factors that can make isolation and loneliness particularly stigmatizing for somebody, and these could be physical. For example, if a person has a lack of access to good transport links, or poor availability of social activities in their area, or low funds, so that could be a reason why they struggle to reach out, or they still remain to feel socially isolated or lonely. And it could be a psychological It could be that they, a lack of confidence and feeling that their reconnection or not reconnecting is their own problem. Do they associate that with personal feelings, thinking that they're the reason why they're isolated and lonely, that it must be their fault? So that it's really important to consider why a person might be feeling that way in order to, be able to support and address that. So some of the things to look out for if you are working with somebody who you think, could be socially isolated or lonely, some key context clues can be really useful to listen out to. So I do appreciate it can be difficult sometimes to necessarily listen out to the context clues, because not everybody will necessarily be having these at length personal conversations with you. But for those of them that the people that are, it can be really important to listen out. For example, do they say that they live in a rural environment, or have they said they've got poor transport links nearby, or have they mentioned not having any family, or relying on their phone or social media platforms to contact family? Have they said about having a caring responsibility, or mentioned living on a low income? Have they got poor mobility, or have they lost their hearing and or their sight? And whether they have a long-term condition such as dementia could be another tale to listen out for, perhaps a family member or friend who has dementia. And finally, again, these ones are a little bit more personal, but I always like to include them to help you look after yourselves and your close friends and family. But if you've noticed that you or somebody has trouble sleeping, or changes in their behaviour, not looking after their appearance or hygiene, or losing interest in the things that they used to enjoy, can be a real sign. And again, prolonged conversation. I think that's something probably most of us have experienced before, is prolonged conversation with somebody who's just trying to have that connection and reach out. So it's really important to listen out to these common signs to be able to identify whether somebody is isolated or lonely. So some tips for reaching out, and these tips are quite useful regardless of where you're at. If it's a personal connection that you've got with somebody, or whether you're working with somebody as a digital champion, or within any other volunteering or employment role that you have, some tips for reaching out is that patience is key. It's not always going to be the case that somebody's going to open up and immediately admit that they're isolated or lonely, and that's absolutely okay. It's important to be patient and be prepared to signpost when a person is ready, and to listen actively. So when a person is talking, listen to understand and not just to respond. So show empathy and validate their feelings. It's a very personal thing to talk about, and if somebody's opening up to you and admitting that they're feeling isolated or lonely, giving them that empathy and validating their feelings could be the difference between them accepting support or not. So it's really important to be actively listening when a person's reaching out to you, and offering help. So if a person is feeling isolated or lonely and they're looking for support, encouraging them to seek help can be a really, if they're comfortable doing so, can be a really supportive next step, just so they're aware that there are agencies there to help them. So I'm going to show a quick video, hopefully you'll be able to hear it, that just gives a little bit of context around positive wellbeing and what the service is. It's a really lovely video. It's a couple of minutes long, but hopefully it will just give context from the service users' mouths of how it can be a supportive service. So could you just let me know if you can hear it? I'll press play, and if you just give a thumbs up or something, just let me know. I'll just mute myself.
Good.
So I absolutely love that video, because I just think it really shows the impact that just that connection has on a person's well-being and their outcomes. And we've had some wonderful feedback. We've had people say it's changed their life, that they feel like they've got a new outlook on life, and it's just through small connections and just supporting somebody to be able to take that first step to reconnect. So Positive Wellbeing is, as I said, a social prescribing service designed to support people who are experiencing feelings of social isolation and loneliness. And social prescribing itself is a means of offering holistic, non-medical support for a range of issues to meet practical, emotional and social needs affecting health. So it's very holistic and very non-clinical. Positive Wellbeing was kind of born from a pilot project that was funded by the Interreg programme, and it saw over 245 people across Kent supported, and it reduced feelings of social isolation by 26% and loneliness by 19%. So really, really fantastic outcomes from the service. And as such, it's now been rolled out across the whole of Kent. It's been rolled out wider and is now an established service in itself, which is what we're looking to continue with today. And it's now available for people aged over 18, as I say, across all of Kent, and it's available in 3 tiers. So tier 1 is our gold standard full service, which is delivered by a community warden within the home of the service user. So this is usually appropriate for somebody who's experiencing chronic loneliness and might have some other comorbidities beside that. They might need support with ensuring that their benefits are in the right place, or they might have some safeguarding concerns. And a community warden is an established and trained person who can support a person within their home. And tier 2 is a lighter touch version of the service. So that's delivered within the community, and it has more of a focus on signposting. So where tier 1, they might attend groups alongside a person and they might reconnect them to more far-reaching services. Tier 2 more specifically would support a person to understand what groups exist around them, or maybe understanding what technology could be used to help facilitate that. And then tier 3 is the awareness raising and signposting. So essentially what we're doing in this session is tier 3, with a hope to potentially look at a bit of tier 2. But it's just making you aware that isolation and loneliness is an issue, and that actually there are support services designed to help. So why digital champions? So connectivity is at the heart of pretty much everything we do. Being online facilitates social connections, and it provides access to work and education. It can keep us healthy and well. So just some interesting things that I found about kind of being connected and online is that more than 1 in 3 people have actually said that being digitally connected is top of their tier list of essentials. More people complete on average 90 online tasks a day. I couldn't believe it when I saw that, but actually when you think about it and you think about your day-to-day life, actually I can well believe that. It could be as much as paying your bills or texting a friend back or looking at, everything's online. So 90 online tasks a day on average. 9 in 10 jobs are advertised online only. 31% of people who experiences of digital exclusion say they feel isolated. And people can appear peer connected with a digital presence, but they may be experiencing profound loneliness. So digital exclusion can have far-reaching consequences. So the role of a digital champion, it could actually be a lifeline for somebody who's digitally excluded. You may come into contact with people who are experiencing or at risk of experiencing social isolation and loneliness, and potentially by identifying somebody in need and supporting them to get online by signposting to them to services that could improve their quality of life, could really make a difference to people in your community. So one of the reasons why we really wanted to kind of deliver this training to as digital champions today is because you are in that really, really unique position. So I'm just going to touch on how positive wellbeing tier 2 could potentially look for you as a digital champion. So the tier 2 journey would include up to 3 sessions of no more than an hour, and it could be integrated into the work that you already do as a digital champion. And these sessions could include using a range of resources such as Refer Kent and other online directories to signpost an individual to groups and services that could improve their well-being. It could be, for example, sitting beside a service user and just having a look at what groups, for example, are available to them if they've not got access to that support at home. It could be supporting an individual connect with friends and and family using their phone, tablet, laptop, or other digital device, something that I'm aware that is something that you already do. Setting up communication tools and apps like Zoom or MS Teams to again be able to facilitate somebody's social connections, and discussing what matters to you to help an individual understand their own connection needs and supporting them to put a little plan in place to be able to reach those goals. So it could be, for example, they want to get a little bit better at using technology to contact their friends and family, and they'd really benefit from seeing what groups are available around them. That could be how the session, and as you as a digital champion, could potentially support somebody. So just moving on very quickly to how to refer into positive wellbeing if you or somebody you know would need that support. So on our webpage, we have a nice handy referral form that can just pop some details in. You can do a referral for somebody else on their behalf if you just pop your details in, and then you can populate their details in as well. We just ask that you have asked their permission, of course, before sending that referral off, and there is a privacy notice that does cover that data collection as well. And all of that's covered under our community warden service and our positive wellbeing data protection agreements. So we also accept referrals by email. We just need the person's name, date of birth, address, and we can get in contact with them to make that referral, and by telephone. And the eligibility is that they must be aged over 18. They must be living in an area supported by a community connector, which at the moment is across the whole of Kent, all 12 districts, and must be free of addiction or severe mental health issues. Again, if you're not aware if they've got addiction issues or severe mental health issues, you can still pop that referral through, and our community wardens will always do an assessment kind of before reaching that point. So they'll always be supported by somebody. If the wardens can't support them, they know who can. So if you think potentially becoming a positive wellbeing champion might be something that you're interested in, it would be really great if you could fill out our feedback form by the Thursday the 19th of September. So what we'll do is we'll make sure that you are given full training on how to support with Tier 2 positive wellbeing, and we'll have some additional resources available to you as well. But yeah, I'm always happy to take any questions, happy to tell if you need to give me a call or an email to find out a little bit more. I'm sure Michaela's also happy to help. But yeah, I hope that's been an interesting session. I hope it might be an interesting offer for you.
Thank you, Emily. It's the video always gets me, and it's the second time now that I watched it, and it's always really moving. And I think that we all do what we do because we care for people, and we do understand that we can all feel lonely, and we want to make a difference. So in a way, all of our digital champions already are being positive. Wellbeing champions against loneliness, but of course having more training and more support on the side that could be really important for everyone or anyone who wants to pursue that end. Andrew, I see you got your hand up.
Yeah, it's actually been very eye-opening, actually. Just listening and reading all about it, I think I've actually been social loneliness for many, many years now. And at the moment, obviously, I'm going through anxiety, depression, and bits and bobs. But that's why I became a digital champion, to try and help others whilst trying to help myself get through all of the anxiety and meeting people. I really, really enjoy doing I used to like going to different venues and different meetings and bits and bobs. So I'm hoping that I can do a lot more. If possible, could I book myself up for this thing on the 19th to carry on going, to be, because then I think this will be good for myself as well as other people.
Definitely. Thank you, Andrew. And thank you for sharing that. I think you're completely right. It is something that we've all experienced. I'm always quite honest that I've experienced quite a bit of social isolation and loneliness at work as well, where I started working online at home. It's been something that is quite difficult, and being able to talk about it and hear other people's perspectives, and to hear actually people put their hands up and say, yeah, this does affect me. It's really honest, it's really powerful. And I think that, it's the kind of connections that you need to make people feel less alone in feeling alone. So definitely, we'll send you this form, and if you could fill out that form with all your details, we'll make sure that absolutely, Andrew, that you're invited to any future training sessions.
I'll get my phone and do the QR now.
Yeah, if anything goes wrong with the QR code, I can always send you the link via email after this session, so you have it there to fill out on your laptop if it's easier.
Yeah, thank you, Michaela. Yeah, that'd be lovely.
Yeah. I saw there was a second hand up, Simon. Oh, you're muted. Let me unmute you. Oh, there you go.
Yeah, Michaela, I don't know if it's an appropriate time now to come in about my group or not, but if so, then I will do that. But I'll leave it up to you. Shall I do it now or?
Yeah, I mean, I think it would be great for you to share what you are already doing, and I think even for Emily, knowing that you're already working and making an impact for people that are attending your group, and maybe she can support you perhaps more than I can do with this, and I think you would really benefit from some of the extra training as well to provide other resources for your group as well. So please feel free to share.
Okay. Good evening, everyone. My name's Simon Wyatt. I live in Gillingham in Kent, one of the Medway towns. I'm a Rethink mental illness group coordinator, and on a weekly basis, I run a peer support group with 3 other people. We are called Rethink Medway Peer Support Group. You can email us. I will put this in the group chat, exactly how it should be spelt if you want to contact us. But you can contact us at medwaygroup@rethink.org. We are a group that help people with social isolation, loneliness, and mental health issues. The group was set up by myself and 3 others 6 months ago. Myself, I have been involved with Rethink Mental Illness for over 10 years. Starting off as a volunteer ambassador and then branching into peer support groups. So this is the second peer support group that I have set up. The first one lasted just over 9 years, and this one's been running for 6 months so far. So if anybody here or anybody that would be interested in finding out more about us, we are happy to give you more information. We cover the whole Medway area, but also we do get inquiries from places like Faversham and Maidstone. So if any of you have any desperate friends who are looking for support, please feel free to get in touch with us, and we shall do everything we can to help. We like to help as best as we can. Thank you for taking the time to listen to me. I hope I haven't bored you too much. I will have to correct, Michaela, the email address slightly, because it's capital M and then EDWA and then it's a capital G, so it's Medway and then capital GROUP, so it's Medway Group at rethink.org. and I shall correct that in a minute or two. Thank you, everyone, for
I did it. I
listening.
corrected it.
And Emily, I'd be happy to have any feedback from you as well. But thank you so much, everyone, for listening to me. Thank you so much.
Thank you,
That's really,
Simon.
really brilliant. That's really brilliant to hear. And actually, Medway is an area that we don't currently have any connectors in. So it'd be really great. I think I will email you if that's okay, Simon, and see potentially how we could look to work together, because I think it's so important that we have these established groups that run within the community that people feel that they can go to. So yeah, thank you so much for sharing that. We'll definitely be in contact to see.
It's really heartwarming as well to hear what you are doing, and we can really hear the passion as well and the commitment that you're putting into this. And it's always good to share these sort of groups that we might, in your case, you might run, but we might also just be aware of, because you never know who could benefit from it.
Yeah.
So it's really good to know that there are places out there where people can join and can feel part of a group.
Yeah, of course. And if anybody wants to get in contact and maybe come along and check out our group, so maybe Michaela, you might want to, or
Hmm.
you, Emily, might want to, then we will happily welcome you. So then you can see us for yourself, and know exactly what we're doing to help people. So please, ladies and gents, please get in touch, and let's all work together, not just as digital champions, but let's also work together, to get people attending Rethink Medway Group, and reducing social isolation and loneliness across Kent, Medway, and other areas of Kent. Let's all work together. It's essential we all work together.
Definitely. Thank you, Simon. Definitely. Like, yeah, I cannot find other words to echo what you just said. You just said it. I see that Glenn is typing. Does anyone want to unmute themselves and if you want to say anything, or feel free to type in the chat as well. Glenn is still typing. I don't know if Glenn, you're still having the same issues with the microphone as well. Like earlier, you tried to intervene, but it wasn't quite working. As you finish typing, I'm just gonna share because it's really interesting. Like my parents were really concerned that when I started doing this job, because I work from home from most of the week, and then I come to the office a couple of times a week, and they were really concerned that I would not cope with it. But we're all different. In these regards as well. So I'm actually dealing with it quite well. I don't know if I would never be able to go back to our Monday to Friday in the office, but it is interesting to see how different situations affect different people in different ways. So that's why talking about it is really important, because you cannot just make assumptions about people and about how they might feel about a certain situation or not. But that's brilliant to know, Glenn.
Definitely. Yeah, that sounds really interesting.
That's lovely. Oh, that is so lovely. I come from a background of working in care, and I worked in a lot of care homes, but also with people with different disabilities, children, you name it. So it is really lovely. And I remember when I moved first to the UK, I would just stop. I used to live in Tunbridge Wells, and I just walked around the town and sit down on a bench, and then random people would sit next to me, and I would just start a conversation and just, I was a lonely person at that time, probably because I had just moved to a different country, didn't have many friends, and I was just trying to make connections, and that made me feel so good about myself in a way. And I spent days chatting to a lot of interesting people. Um, yeah, it's just amazing what we can all do in our little words. Yeah.
Absolutely. I think that's really, really kind of hit the nail on the head, Michaela, is that it's such little interactions that we could have with a person that can really kind of change their lives and really change their outlook on their lives. Because as I say, with the digital champion, if you know, you come across somebody who is isolated or lonely, just being able to identify that and having that, allowing that person to have a bit of a sounding board that they're not alone and that actually there are support agencies, and whether it's you providing that low level support of signposting, whether it's identifying actually this person really does need a bit more help and being able to refer them on, you know, to an agency that can support, like our maybe tier 1 positive wellbeing or another social prescribing agency. It's giving them, it's empowering them, I think is the right word, empowerment. So you're not forcing, you're not hand holding, but you're gently allowing them to express their feelings and giving them the platform that they need to be able to do something about it. And I've become really passionate within this job role about isolation and loneliness just because of the sheer amount of people who have come across who've had a similar experience, and being able to give somebody almost like a new lease of life to be able to relive again happily is really, it's really powerful. So it's really great to hear about all of the things that you're all doing and all of the wonderful things that you do, and obviously the digital champion role is just lovely because it's just lovely to be volunteering your time to be able to support somebody else. So I think it takes a type of person, and I think it you know, it really reflects in the time that you're giving to support people. So thank you so much everybody for coming today to listen to our presentation. I really hope to see some of your faces again at our future training sessions.
Thank you, Emily. Thank you so much. And thank you everyone who has joined today the session. I will be rolling out the recording of this session as well as the link to become a wellbeing champion. And if you have any questions, I will pop in if Emily agrees, her email address as well, so you can get in touch directly.
Please do.
And thank you very much, everyone. Hope to see you soon.
Thank you for coming, everyone.
Bye.
Thank you.
See you later.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye. Have a lovely evening.
Ciao.
Thank you very much.